Jim Padilla here on the Head Smack Podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavoni, and I have another misfit with me. I have Jim Padilla with me, and Jim is the kind of leader who's been through life's fire and emerged with grit, wisdom, and an unstoppable drive. Jim, how you doing, man?
It's doing fantastic. So glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I'm looking forward to this conversation. You and I got to be on a summit recently, and I enjoyed what you shared. And I thought I got to talk to Jim. We got to learn a little bit more about each other, and then just hear some of his wisdom. And so I appreciate you being on, man. And so usually the way I like starting this podcast is I like hearing a little bit about your origin story. You know, what is the origin of Jim? And you can go as far back as you need to, but just share a little bit about your origin story, man.
Yeah, I always end up going back to childhood because that kind of set the arc for where this went. But, my parents were teenagers when they had me back in the 60s. And my dad took off right away, didn't know what to do. And my mom responded to a bad situation with a lot of rage and fear. And so taking it out on me, and there was a lot of abuse and beat with a lot of things, and ended up in foster care at 13 and on the streets in gangs as a teenager and in jail by 19. And I spent, you imagine the skill set that you gain when you have to spend every waking moment in the first 20 years of your life reading the room, at school. I'm preparing myself to go home and not make my mom want to hit me, what was going to happen. And then I was at school, I was at home trying to pretend what character I was going to be at school so that people didn't know this ridiculous home life that I had.
Wow.
And then being on the streets and then, foster care, it's like you're always trying to blend to the room. Like, okay, what do they need from me so that they see me as an ally and not a threat? Because that's what I thought. I was getting beat or abused or whatever because I was a threat. I didn't realize there were other things going on. But then, of course, being on the streets and, running with gangs and then in jail, constantly reading the room to make sure that I'm like, okay, how can I be ally? How do I make Paul want and need me so that I am an asset to him? So then I'm off the threat radar.
Wow.
And that was how I survived.
So where did that thinking come from?
It's just pure survival, man. It was just reading the room and I started recognizing that if you could be useful to people, they needed you.
Yeah.
And so then I took it to the nth degree, and then I started to have, okay, not just could I be useful, but how could I ensure that they see me as useful, even if they didn't? It's like, how could I create a scenario where they needed me? I would manipulate whatever room I needed to be in because I needed to win.
Right.
That's all I knew.
Yeah.
And so, little did I know that this was a skill set that would serve me to earn millions of dollars over the next, 25 years of my life, by teaching other people how to read the room, how to bend influence in your direction so that people will not see you as a threat, but as an ally. And then they diffuse them, because in sales, the biggest challenge is that most people don't see you as an ally until it's too late. They see you as a threat for the most part, and they're trying to safeguard their wallet or their heart or their head or wherever you're trying to get into. And the better job you do at disabling that, then you can get to some real conversations and some real opportunities to be able to help people. And so once, I spent a lot of my career opening businesses and building businesses, but every business I built was just a means to be able to assemble a sales team of people that I could teach this to. And then, in 2013, we got approached to fill a gap in the expert community, the coaching consultant world, that everybody was trying to scale their companies, but nobody either had sales teams or wanted to run a sales team. And so we stepped in because there was nobody doing it back then. Now there's one on every street corner.
Yeah.
But so, then we stepped in, and we're really good at being able to step into people's brand, assimilate their community and their environment, and be an extension of their brand, which most people don't think is possible. It's like, well, you can't step in from the outside and be like me. I'm like, once we really understand the core story and the journey you're on, then we are sold out. to being able to be that extension of you. And then, when we train, build systems, processes, team that are a replication of your brand, an extension of you, so that, our mission is to ensure that every time your company touches any part of the public, they're feeling you the whole time.
So, that's quite a leap or a difference between, being in foster care and, having to, fight for things and learning how to work a room or to work relationships or whatever. So what was that first step, from foster care, your first job or your first success where you started learning some of this stuff and applying it in business?
Well, it was an easy move because basically the skill set has never changed, just the intent has
Right.
changed. Because the first 25 years of my life, I fought everybody for everything. There's a story, I don't remember it, but my mom tells it. When I was in first grade and used to line up on the blacktop to come in from recess, apparently a kid would line too close behind me and I turn around and punch him
Oh,
because
wow.
I felt threatened, right? I don't remember that, but that's what she says. Um, but I was just on heightened alert, like being in combat all the time. So I was always looking for a way to protect myself. Once I started recognizing that I couldn't just beat my way through life, I had to find another way to disarm people. And I started using it even, I remember in fifth grade, we had well, I don't know how long you've been in America, but there's used to be this thing called the Scholastic magazine. And you could go out, your kids in school would go out and get subscriptions. You'd sell a bunch of subscriptions to these
Yeah,
as
yeah,
a
I remember
fundraiser for
those. Yeah.
school. Well, if you won, you got to put a pie in the face of whatever teacher you wanted to. And I desperately wanted to put a pie in Mr. Henry's face. So I went to all my friends. I said, look, you're not going to win. All you're going to do is get your mom and your uncles and your neighbors. So let's put all of them on my sheet. We will
Wow.
win. I'll win for us, and we will put a pie in Mr. Henry's face. And I won by a landslide, right? And so that was like my first sales vibe, where I was like, okay,
Yeah.
I can actually move people to get something done here.
Yeah.
And actually going back before that, when I was in second grade, we never did the lemonade stands, but we used to make these ceramic keychains, and then we'd sell them on the street corners. And we had so many of them, I just knew I couldn't sell them all. So I had my friends, we had multiple corners going. My job was to take the change and go to the arcade down the street and constantly change out dollars for quarters.
Wow.
And so even back then it was running those people. So, but you always start learning, what do they want? What do they need? How do you become useful to them? And as long
Yeah.
as you can solve the problem for them, of course, I wasn't thinking it like Zig Ziglar was at that time. I was just thinking I can be useful to them. They need me. I can get what I need.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it just became an instinct. I started seeing that way, I mean, I was selling book reports in school because I was really good at getting them done. And then I started being arbitrage and figuring out, oh, Paul knows how to write them better than me. I'll sell the service to him. I'll pay Paul to do it, and I'll make the cut in between. Right.
Nice. Nice. And so what was your first job where you got to start applying those skills in a regular
Um,
9 to 5, or was it an entrepreneurial thing, or
it
what
was
was that?
the first place where I was able to leverage that powerfully was I got an Amway when I was 19. Because I'm the kind of guy that gets recruited for every MLM out there. And I just saw, man, I could actually do something here. And I can, it was the perfect scenario. I can get a bunch of other people to get what they want by helping me get what I want. And they would do the work. I just had to lead them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's where I started seeing like there was an actual strategy to this, a tangibleness that can really make this go. Um, and that's how I worked every job. I've always had side businesses, but I was the guy who literally had 100 jobs before I was 25
Wow.
because I just did not fit into anybody's idea of what an employee was supposed to be. And there was always some part of me that knew that what you're doing is kind of dumb and you shouldn't do it that way. Why don't we do it like this? And you'll save time and we'll make more money. And it turns out that most managers in companies don't really want your opinions about that stuff. They just want you to shut up and do your job. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that didn't roll well for me for a long time. But I started my first business venture was an alarm company. I was at an ADT dealership, and we were taking people out in neighborhoods and knocking on doors, selling alarm systems. And then pretty soon my team was outproducing the entire office. So then I just created my own dealership and then ended up with 3 offices, around California, one of the top dealers in the state. And I was doing that, and I was, we were kicking butt and taking names. And then I came across a gentleman who was, well, loosely, I'll say he was playing outside the lines in the mortgage space back in the early 2000s when it was ripe for criminal activity. Um, and he's found out how I built my alarm company, and he was like, "Hey man, I got a license." I was a car dealership, right? I got a guy going out to do an install for a $3,000 CCTV package as a used car dealership, and he goes out there on a COD, and he's like, "Hey man, this guy, he's not paying me. He wants to talk to you." So I drive out there, and we start talking. An hour later, he's convinced me that we can make a ton of money in mortgage, because he had a license that he was not using. And he's like, "My license, you fill this place with a bunch of reps and we'll just split the money." And I was like, all I saw was dollar signs.
Yeah.
And I was like, boom, so I sold I had 2 partners, sold my piece of the alarm company. That was on a Friday when I talked to him. Monday, we had 30 loan officers in that office, and we were stacking cash. And I didn't even know anything about mortgage. I just said yes.
Wow.
So I just jumped in and said, we'll figure this out along the way. And it's kind of interesting because I had we were, obviously, in the wholesale game, and as a brokerage, and I had this guy named Addison Beverly with BNC Mortgage, and he was a subprime specialist. But what they were doing, we knew how to sell the stuff. I had no clue how to package loans really well. So we kept submitting things, and his underwriting team kept sending his facts like, "This is wrong. This is LTV is too high. This is out of whack. Your debt to income is messed up. What are you guys doing over there?" So Addison comes into my office one day, shuts my office, closed the blinds, and he looks at me and he goes, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" And I said, "Dude, I don't have a clue," but I had a stack, I had like 35 packages of loans to get processed. And I said, "Here's the deal. I could sell this shit all day long. If you can help me package them, we'll get rich." And he goes, "Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to show you exactly what to do on these. You give me first right of refusal on every one of these loans. And if we can't do it, I'll tell you which bank to send it to, and we'll do this." And so I started doing everything he was saying, and I kept sending it. And his underwriter, Wendy, would fax him back with Sharpie marks on it, change this, fix that, do that. And then one day she faxed one back over and had a big old smiley face on it. She's like, "You did it." And it was crazy. But that's how that was my first 6 months in the mortgage industry. I learned more in that 6 months than anybody who went to school to get anything educated formally did in a book. That was how I stumbled into entrepreneurship. Well, every time it was always like that.
Now, you had mentioned that there was a transition point in 2013. What was the business that you were running at that time, and how did you get to that point of that business?
Yeah. Well, when the mortgage industry kind of did its upside down loop in 2008, we were hit hard with that because our mortgage shop was a chop shop. I just showed you the beginnings of it. It was not built on anything ethical. It was just built on making money. And we got really good at option arms and pick a pays. And so we had, 40 guys in our office, and we were all selling option arms, and we got paid really well to do it. And so when ABC Mortgage and Washington Mutual shut their doors on that fateful Friday, we had, I believe, 43 loans that were already signed, waiting through a 3-day period to fund, about $2.5 million worth of commissions, gone.
Wow.
Just like that. Overnight, all of our commissions were gone. So that was on a Friday. By the end of the next week, we went from 40 loan officers to me and the broker. They all quit and left because they had no clue what to do. Because we were not building an ethical business, so we couldn't bank on our client base, and because loans just kept showing up every day because the rates were low, property values were high. So the guys who were ethical and not doing those kind of loans, they stayed in business while the rest of us were gone. So I immediately had to start looking for something else to do, and I started to say, well, I know how to sell this stuff, so let me start teaching other people how to sell. That was when I started becoming a sales trainer, and that was all I was doing, was trying to coach people on how to convert clients. And then when we stepped into this opportunity to provide sales solutions done for you for this industry of high influence, high ticket entrepreneurs, I was like, dude, let's do it. And the first client I had was Bill Barron. And at the time, he was an emerging rock star, and he was on a mission to do his first $1 million launch. He's like, I want to do $1 million launch. And I was like, brought us on to do this. I said yes. I didn't even know what a launch was, never heard of one. I went and bought Jeff Walker's PLF book. Matter of fact, it's right back there in that shelf there. I read it overnight, hired 12 of my friends, including one of my daughters. And we had no systems, no processes, no technology, no structure. We just jumped in and did it. 3 weeks later, it was a $1.6 million, wildly successful train wreck of a launch. And 2 weeks later, there's a line at the door. And so for the next 2 years,
Wow.
we sold $50 million worth of revenue and stuff for our clients doing launches and events. And then after that, people started wanting us to stick around to do day-to-day sales between launches and events. And of course, we said yes to that. And that was a whole different animal. And we started building out, processes, systems, structures. Here we are now, hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tools, templates, data, processes, systems, structures, and over $500 million worth of sales results for our clients. We've now just become the collection of data, strategy, processes, and outcomes. We've just been in it longer, done more of it than anybody else, and we just know things that most people just don't know.
Yeah. So, when you read that book, what were some of the lessons that have stuck with you from that book that made the big difference?
From that launch book?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was awesome. Really, the biggest lesson I learned in there is that I did not have to know it all. I just had to know where to find it all, right?
Yeah.
Because 90% of what we're doing in business has already been done. We just got to find a new way to put a nuance or a tweak or a spin on it. So I have stopped trying to invent things, and I am the master at optimizing things. So whatever you've done, I can find a way to make it better. And so I can go, there's always a book, a podcast, attempt somewhere I can find the information. That's why the biggest lesson that I learned from that Jeff Walker PLF launch book, that it was everything in there. It was tactics and strategies, but it was all built on sound principles, and principles never go away.
Yeah. And so, when it comes to, what you're doing now and how you're helping people, your moniker is the sales godfather, right? And so let's talk sales, because sales is one of those things that, a lot of people feel that they can't do. A lot of people maybe don't want to do it. People feel overwhelmed by it. They don't know the first steps to it. So let's start talking about sales. When somebody comes to you and says, I don't like sales at all, I'm terrible at it, what do you tell them?
First of all, you have to help people. Understand that you've been selling your whole life, every day of your life. That's the only way you get through life. So to help them recognize that this is not a learned skill, this is something you've been doing. So it's just a matter of being able to identify and recognize how you do it naturally, because every one of us does it differently. But at the end of the day, you are constantly winning people over to your way of thinking, or they're winning you over to theirs. There's no in between. And so if you want your kids to do their homework before they go play, you got to sell them. If you want them to eat broccoli before they eat their dessert, you got to sell them. If you want your wife, to enjoy who you are, and she wants you to take out the trash, she has to sell me on the benefits of why take out the trash, or I have to sell her on the benefits of me not being that guy. And happy wife, happy life always wins out. So she wins on that all the time, right? So it's just what I do. But I don't do it because I love to take out the trash. I do it because there's a benefit to me that helps me win while serving her. Right. And so if we break down everything we do, every single transaction we do in your entire life has that benefit and cost analysis always. And so when you see that, then you can recognize that it's an existing skill set you have. And now we just have to be able to put a system that will allow you to do it intentionally. Because you're doing it subconsciously every day. Now we just want to strip it away so that you can see this is how you actually do it. And instead of you trying to become some other expert, you can't be me. You can't be Jeremy Miner. You can't be Alex Hormozy, but you can be you. And the best version of you is the most enrolling thing you will ever come across. So our mission is to help strip that part down and systemize the process of you doing you intentionally. And the problem where most people get is when they come into a business setting, they think, oh, I am in a sales role. I must be a sales bot. And they put on this hat and I'm now a salesperson to do this thing. And then they wonder why somebody doesn't buy. Of course they're not buying because that's not you.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not as
So,
hard as people make it.
well, but for some people, you know, that either they're introverted or they have made sales to be something, you know, just a gift, a something that, you know, somebody else is better at than I am. So
Yeah.
when you approach somebody or somebody approaches you and you know you're wanting to help them, what are some of the first things that you look at in their processes, in their systems, in their personality, in their brand, and what they're doing? What are some of the first foundational things that you start chipping away at or start refining?
Yeah. I'm I'm probably going to have different perspectives on this than 90% of people you're going to come across in the sales space because I don't teach scripts and I don't have magical ways for you to say these things to get people to buy. I actually teach you how to just be a greater version of the human that you are and watch how it naturally lines up. And matter of fact, I have a program called 10 Moves to Make More Sales Without Getting Better at Selling. I'll make sure I get that to you so you guys can have that. It's going to be in the show notes. You guys can have access to it, be a gift. And it's simple. It's a 90-second lesson, 10 days in a row that move you through things that are not sales tactics, that are just things you can do better to be able to show up and make more sales. One of those things is understanding that you won't need to just be the ideal version of the problem solver that you are, and everything starts with your offer. So when you start figuring out what is the master of solution that you provide and you just extrapolate that out and put that into every piece of messaging so that when they meet you the first time, like for many of you, this is the first time you've met me, and everything I'm talking about here is when you start moving in my world, you're just going to see more of it and more of it and more nuance to it, bigger, smaller, all of it. But I'm not going to start talking about baking pies all of a sudden. Right. And so everything you see in this is going to be like, okay, you can decide whether you like me or not. What you're not going to have to make any decisions on is, do I know what the hell I'm talking about? Because that's been proven from the beginning and it just continually gets reinforced. So then by the time we're having a conversation about whether you want to utilize our services or explore what we can do, everything makes sense. So then your brain subconsciously is going, okay, this feels like the logical next move. Like your offer should always be the logical conclusion to a well-told story. Most people have a total disconnect on that. They spend all their time trying to get people to like them, and then they show up and try to sell them something. And there's just a disconnect subconsciously. But most people don't know that, so they're not going to tell you, well, my subconscious isn't lining up correctly, so I'm not going to buy today. They say things like, well, I got to think about it. Or
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't afford it. And then you're trying to solve for, I got to think about it, or I can't afford it. And that isn't even the problem.
Yeah.
Right.
I like that. That is so good. And so, you know, you said something there about the logical outcome of a well-told story, or you phrased it some other way. So, what makes up, if that's a key, if that's a main ingredient to doing sales well, what makes up a well-told story?
It's first and foremost, you have to get really clear about obsessing about your customers' problems. Which of course requires you to have a customer. Who's the person that you are most suited to serve, most suited to solve problems for? And then you got to go deep. We talk about the 1 inch mile in our perspective, and if you go 1 inch wide and a mile deep, there's 5,280 feet in a mile. If you can list 5,280 things you know about your ideal client, you are the expert of the problem. And you should be able to speak to any small nuance in their life, right? We deal with a lot of business owners, scaling entrepreneurs that are trying to build sales teams and grow. And so I don't just talk about systems and process and structure. I can say, Paul, remember the last time you were at a mastermind event and you and your colleagues, everybody's hanging out at the pool and you had your phone with you because you had to keep an eye on your team in case they needed you. But who was the guy across the pool who didn't have the phone or the computer because his company was running so well that he didn't have to check on them? He could come home afterwards and know that he actually made more sales this week while he was gone. Is that the kind of reality you want to live in? Right. So I can speak to that instead of
Yeah. Yeah.
Is your funnel working? Is your, it's like, who cares about that? What's the
Yeah.
freedom in the life that you're looking for? And if I can speak to a specific type of scenario, and I can paint 100 or 1,000 of those scenarios as you can for your ideal client, you just have to get really intimate with that. And when you start thinking about it, you'll recognize that you know all the little things that happen when nobody's looking that they're dealing with. And you know it. You don't have to ask if it's happening. You know it's happening because you are the expert of the problem. Because like I wake up in the middle of the night obsessing about your problems, not mine.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know mine are handled, but I know what you need and I want you to win.
That's so good. So the first part is articulating their problem within a story as opposed to a step one, step two, step three type scenario. But as you
Right.
said there, you painted a picture of what an ideal outcome would look like for them, and then asking them, is that what you want? Do I have that correct?
Right. Yeah. And you'll have as many versions of that as you need to. And you put them out and you put them into social media, you put them on a talk, you do it, say it from stage, whether it's one-on-one, one to many, you're still having a conversation with one person all the time. And then
Yeah.
ideally is landing in front of many of those one persons. And that's the key. Your conversion mechanism is almost irrelevant if you're not putting it in front of the right people. So you
Yeah.
have to be really clear about those people and then be willing to speak to that problem in such a way that it compels them and draws them in, and trust that it will also draw in other people that are not that specific niche, but the more clearly and directly you can speak to the problems you solve, it attracts people that are not in that niche, but they love the certainty and the clarity that you provide. So they want you to help them too.
Yeah, wow, that's so good. And so having several different of those stories about the kind of outcomes based on understanding your audience and the problem they have. You'd mentioned that leads them to your offer. Are there any other things, and I do want to talk about what makes a good offer, but I do want to talk about, is there any other things that somebody needs to have figured out or have defined or have clarity on that helps them get from telling a good story that leads them to the offer? Is there anything else in there that they need to work on?
Yeah, it's helpful for you to know ahead of time. I don't know what it is. I guess it's just the entrepreneur in us, but most people run headlong into putting this together before they ever think about how much it's going to cost to actually deliver something. And so we start making pricing models based on what other people are doing. And we've kind of taken a policy around here that I don't care what everybody else is doing. I want to run a profitable business. And you might be selling your services at half of what I'm selling them for, but I can't guarantee that you're profitable or that you can solve any problem necessary because you could pay for anything you need if you have to bring in outside help. Right. So when you have to, right from the beginning, figure out what would this cost for you to deliver this at the most elite level. So if you hired us to, what we do is we'll design your entire sales journey from inception all the way to exit. And then we know everything that's going to be along the way because this is what we do. We already know the problems you're going to encounter and we've already built in solutions for them. And a lot of those solutions don't include us, right? So like we met at Adrian Summit. Well, Adrian is embedded in our world. We are co-collaborators. I'm in his world, he's in ours. And when our clients come to the place where they need his solutions, we're already pre-selling them. He comes in and speaks in our place, in our community once a month, right? So we already know that there's things that need to be solved, and he does it way better than I do. And I'm not going to build an AI platform and do all the stuff that he's doing. So why not just have him do it for them? And so you want to think through all that stuff and then start thinking through what will that cost you? And what are all the problems that will come up along the way? And if you are stuck, if you're the low price leader and a big problem comes up, guess who's got to solve it? You, because you can't hire anybody else because there's no room, right? Or you're spending money that you should be putting aside to pay taxes or to recruit team or to invest in development and growth of your company. But we're not thinking of that. We just think, well, it takes me 2 hours to deliver this and I can charge this much. So I'm going to charge for my time. It's like, dude, no. You're building a business from day one. Start building it effectively from day one. You don't have to earn the right anymore. There's no more such thing as pay your dues. Right? It used to be like that. You can have a profitable business in year one if you do it smart from the beginning, and your offers have to match that. So offer what you know you can solve for and what it will cost you to solve for. And those costs include keeping the lights on
Right, right,
and
right.
business next year.
Yeah. Now, when it comes down to that offer, that you've told the story, you've got their attention, they're interested. Um, do people sometimes fail at the clarity of the offer? And kind of talk us through that, because you can go out there and you can tell the story and you can articulate all these things about the problems that the client has, and then you get all this attention. But then once you've got their attention, you fail in articulating your offer, right? Is that a problem that people are having? And what are some things that they could do to make that a little better?
Yeah. Again, I'll go back to, I try not to be a sales expert, and I try not to have everybody think they have to be one. And the better you are at articulating those things in the front end, the less effective you have to be on the back end. Because ideally, if you do have a conversation with somebody, a genuine conversation that says, look, you're experiencing this problem, and you have to get them to a place of clarity that this problem can no longer exist in their world if they want the life that they want, then get them to a place of being committed to do something about it. And then I'll tell you guys, all the hocus pocus out there in the world, we have worked with some of the biggest experts out there that you would know all their names, and everything from 172 slides in a pitch deck down to here's the PDF. All of those are just tactics. What's the most important part of this here is that you get somebody to the place of knowing they need this and ready to do something about it. Then you can literally pull up the sales page and walk through it with them. You don't have to have magic in this. Once they're clear about what's the outcome. When you work with us, you'll know that you are on the path towards having the freedom and profit that your business was intended to deliver, and that you have started to forget will ever occur because you haven't figured out how to do it. And that's what we do. We deliver businesses, we help you build a machine that your team can run so that you can start experiencing the freedom and profit that you wanted when you first opened your business. But it's been so damn long that you've forgotten that that was even a thing, right? If you know that's something you want, and we can get to a place where that is a commitment for you, you don't even care what the how is. But most people are way too busy selling, how does this work? Here's how we do it. Here's what will happen in week 1. Here's what module 1 is. That's all wrong. You're a product in search of a prospect when you're doing that. And you can't do that. You need to be a solution provider for the ideal person and be able to bring them to an experience and an outcome. Because here's the reality. I can change my product anytime I want to, as long as it's still going to give the solution that we agreed for. But if you bought the product, now I got to convince you that this product's better than that one.
Right. That's so good. So, let's talk about one of the things that you talk about is the crisis, or the sales industry being in crisis. So let's talk about that. What does that mean, the sales industry is in crisis, for somebody that might not be familiar with the sales industry?
Well, as you can see the gray in my beard, I've been around a little bit. So people are usually...
I've gone totally white here, and that's called teenagers right there.
Yeah. Most people are pretty surprised when they find out I got 7 grandkids. But I started selling pre digital marketing, pre funnels, pre internet. When my first sales job, I walked in the door, there was a rotary phone and a phone book, and that was the funnel.
And probably one of those flip Rolodexes, right?
Yes. Oh yeah, absolutely. Index cards, recipe box, right?
Yes.
So we learned things that today's sales professional never had to learn, because so much of that has been done for them. And here's what's happening. There's an entire industry. If you've been in business or selling in the last 10 years or more recently, you've never sold in bad times. You've never had to. And you've learned a false reality, not your own fault, but the sales training industry has convinced you that all you have to do is be a great closer. And you're going to have a calendar full of leads, and your job is just to sell. Well, we deal on the other side of that. We've had nearly 1,000 sales reps come through our company to work on campaigns and stuff. And then we work with companies who, it does not matter what size they are. We have never seen a company, 7, 8, 9-figure company, that is actually built and designed to sell a product. Every company in the history of man was built to deliver a solution, not built to sell one smoothly. And so we've spent the last 13 years building systems, processes, and structures that allow salespeople to do their job well. And so what we have to do is come in and be able to put that into companies. But we have this disconnect now where we have an entire industry of closers who believe the only thing they should have to do is show up and run calls from their calendar. And they shouldn't have to work pipelines. They shouldn't have to come to meetings. They don't have to do due diligence. They don't have to be a useful asset. They just believe as long as I'm closing sales, I'm valuable to you and I should be deserving of top dollar. The problem is you're dealing with maybe the top 20%, more likely the top 5% of the industry can actually deliver the kind of results that make that a reality. All the rest of the salespeople on the planet, I'm one of them. I'm really good, but I do much better with a well-designed machine around me, right?
Yeah.
And but I know how to work a pipeline. I know how to do great due diligence on leads. I know how to provide, excuse me, a buying experience that is game changing. And so I'm an extension of the brand, mine or anybody else's, that I make the company more valuable. I make the company more profit. I know how to keep relationships with people and upsell and cross sell and work pipelines and build a book of business. If you're a salesperson who closes more on the front end than on the back end, that just means you don't work the back end, because 100% of effective salespeople should make most of your money on the back end, right? 90% of our business growth comes from all the money that we make on the back end by working pipelines and serving people powerfully on the back end. But that requires that I'm prepared for that. I have systems and processes and structures as a sales individual who is what we call a profit seat. All right. And so we certify salespeople to be a profit seat, so they're an irreplaceable asset to a company. And then on the company side, we tell them, look, we're going to bring you these kind of people, but you're not worthy of them yet because you don't have a system, structure, and process that's going to attract them and allow them to do their job better. Sales, here's the dichotomy, and this is the emergency we're in. Sales business owners believe that a closer is going to be the magic tool, the magic wand to solve all the shit in their business. And it just doesn't work that way. And then they think they're expendable. They can just replace them. Oh, I'll just get another one. I'll just get another one. And that doesn't work, man. These are humans who have to pay bills and feed their family. And so you got to treat them well. A good salesperson, they want to stay at a company for a long time. But the culture has created one of job shopping because they just got to move from one campaign to the other. And then the other side is the salespeople who don't really understand that they have to come pack in a tool set, a skill set that is beyond just being a closer. If all you can do is convert somebody into a buyer, that's awesome. But that makes you a commodity, because I know 1,000 people personally, and I know of 1,000,000 people out there who can do it also. So
Wow.
that means you're only as good as your last day. We are building the bridge between the two because we are uniquely qualified. We've walked in both worlds for a decade plus, for $500 million worth of results plus, and we know what it takes for that company to deliver those kind of outcomes for a salesperson, and what it takes for that salesperson to become irreplaceable, desired asset in the company.
Wow. Wow. Now you've talked about systems and structure and processes, and you've talked about the back end, and once you've got the sale, once you've got the attention, once you've converted. So I want to talk a little bit about some of those strict structures and systems and processes. Are there ones that are general enough that everybody should have in place that makes for success, or is it all bespoke and does it all need to be tweaked?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that generally need to be done, and here's the thing, um, nothing I'm saying is rocket science. I'm pretty sure that everything I'm saying you already know, right? So it's just we just do it because we
Yeah.
see it. It's on the front line, and the problem for most business owners, even the most sophisticated business owner, is that you're busy, man. You're trying to build an empire. You're trying to serve your clients. You're trying to get on stages and do stuff. Who the hell's got time to build out all these separate systems and do this stuff? Best of intentions aside. And so it's not that you don't do it. It's not that you don't know it needs to be done. But as my friend Vanessa Shaw says, if you know it and you don't have the result, don't say I know it unless you have the results to show it. Right. And my mom used to say a version of that, not so nicely though. But and so the first thing here's how you want to start thinking about it. And this is a never-ending process, guys, which is why you need somebody whose full-time capacity is to oversee this and ensure it happens. We call it ownership. Somebody has to own this process. You need to always be focusing on what's happening in the pre, the during, and the post stage of the sales journey. Most people spend 90% of their time on focusing on the front end. How am I going to go from click to cash as fast as humanly possible? and that's wonderful. And then they spend all their time just front loading more people into the funnel. And I call it the 90-10 fallacy, because if you spend 90% of your time on where 10% of your sales come from, then it leaves only 10% to focus on where 90% of your sales come from. So it's a disconnect. But that's what people do, because that's what the whole marketplace is telling them they need to do. Just get another funnel, just get another funnel, just get another opt-in, all of these things. And what you should have is, if I look at your segmentation and there's like 1, 2, or 3 things, I already know you're not doing it. And not because you don't want to, it's just because you don't know what else to do. When you're really segmented as well as you can, you should have as many segmentations as you have offers, as many segmentations technically as you have opt-ins, as you have resources, because in today's economy, it's a requirement. You have to communicate with people based on the commitment they made. They came to you for a certain opt-in or for a certain event, but now you're throwing them into the pool, talking to them about everything. And you're wondering why you got a 33% open rate on your emails, right? So you have to have a process that says once a month or once a quarter, I'm going to add one more layer of nuance, one more layer of nuance. I'll tell you the truth, you'll never be at 100%. So don't try to be, but always try to get more. And your back end should be wider than the front end. So if you're bringing people in the front end of the funnel through 3 to 5 to 7 different mechanisms, each one of those mechanisms should have 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 backends, because you should have some that came in late stage, some who are high intent buyers, some who were just interested in that. You'll know that based on the behavior, based on what things they opted in for, what you promised them as a result of what they opted in for. So when you do that, then you start having, personality, segmented follow-up sequences on the back end for people who said, yes, I want that, just not right now, or for the person who said that's not for me, because that doesn't mean it's not for me. It just means they're on a longer nurture cycle, or they're waiting for an emergency to happen in their life, right? So how do you stay relevant and valuable in somebody's world, and then somebody else? How do you stay top of mind, premium, for when they're ready, they come to you, right? And again, if you're not asking those questions, then you're certainly not building those solutions. Those are the questions that we ask all the time. What has to happen pre? And then once you lay those steps out, then you start, here's where most people go wrong, is everybody immediately goes, well, where can I automate that? And I'm okay with that, but never at the expense of effectiveness. Automation is typically about efficiency. Efficiency is opposite of effectiveness most of the time. You can be, we say, as a mass, get 100% effective, and then work backwards towards efficiency until it stops being effective. And that's where you have to cap out at efficiency.
Wow,
because if you just try to get as efficient as possible, you are compromising the back end. And today, you can't afford that. You have to do the opposite. Don't just look for where you can be efficient. Look for where you can add another human touch point. When you're in our world, you get opt in for something, somebody on my team calls you. Even if it's just a free opt-in or for a registration, we want to know right from the beginning that you're building a relationship with a human company, and you're a human, and we care about you, and we want to know how we can serve you.
Right.
And that's required today, because the trust is at an all-time low.
Yeah. Man, that is so good. That is so good. Now, you talked about segmentation, and I want to dive into that a little bit. How do you properly segment? Is it through, kind of like the coin sorter, it goes into the proper slots based on the size, right? So how do you for a business that might be listening to this and say, okay, you mentioned segmentation was a key to success, or one of the keys to success. How do you properly do that? How do you, like, for somebody that's even a chiropractor or a roofer or whatever, talk through some of that a little bit more.
Yeah, well, you have to first decide your world. It's your world, so you decide the rules, right? Your circus, your monkeys. So you have to decide what are the nuances that you need to speak through people to. And so here's a tool or a strategy that'll help you think that through. We tell people typically that 3 different people come to our world usually, and it's a company that wants to make more sales, a company that's running a sales team, or a company that's looking to outsource the sales functions. Which one best fits you, right? And so we talk usually in one of those 3 lenses. And we try to make sure that when we're doing videos and trainings and stuff, that we are addressing those, or that it's relevant to those 3. You have to decide what are those 3 for you. And then you can, underneath them, you can start splitting them and put more nuance to all of them. And then you speak, like for us, some of the nuance we'll put in play is age of business or revenue. And because if you're at 0 to 6 figures, we love you and we want to help you. I don't have anything really for that person because those aren't the problems we solve anymore. And I'm way more suited for somebody who's playing a bigger, faster game. And there's a lot better people who are way more effective at teaching a beginner. I'm just not that guy.
Yeah.
And so you have to know that we make sure we share that with people because I can help you. I got podcasts, I got free master classes and stuff we do, but overwhelmingly, I don't really have a way to engage you and support you. Right.
Yeah.
So you want to make sure that those are if that's a reality for you, what are your constraints? And make sure your constraints make up your segmentation. Right. Part of our constraints, and we are not set up to work with a company, even if they're doing $10 million, we're not set up to work with a company who doesn't have a team. Because we have a lot of things that have to get done, and there's things that we do, and there's things that your team does. And if you only have a VA and that's a constraint. You're going to have to do some things different, or we're probably not the company that can serve you, right? So you have to think through that stuff, and then you have to be able to segment and sort those things ahead of time. So it's your job to figure out what are the lanes, and then what are the restrictions and the constraints you have, and then those become segmentation points.
Yeah. Yeah, that is so good. So with the structure, systems and processes, where do you find that most businesses fail in that journey? We've talked about the story, we've talked about the offer, we've talked about the back end, we've talked about segmentation, talked about a whole lot of things. But where are you finding the trend or the pattern of people failing in that process the most?
I think it's interesting because the state of the technology in the world today is that it is moving so much faster than it's ever been, that you can get whiplash trying to keep up with the latest and greatest trends. But it's interesting because if you see these phones, right, they set it up so you need a new phone every year. But I just got this phone a couple of months ago. Only because I lost my stylus out of the other one and I had to get it. Otherwise, I would have still had it. I've had it going on 3 years. I intentionally did not renew. I lost nothing, right? I maybe didn't get the newest, version of the camera, but I didn't lose anything. And you have to look at what are your needs versus what are your wants, and make sure that you build structure and foundation on your needs, because your needs, you find things that will solve for your needs, and you'll be able to stick with that for longer seasons of success than you chase your wants. Because if you chase wants, I am a freaking impulse buyer and a half. I see every latest, greatest thing. I'm like, I want that app. I want that app. I want that app. And then my team's going nuts trying to figure out how to make all these apps work together, because guess what? I got another one too. And so you have to be really clear about what you need to solve. Keep your head down. Don't go as much as you may have found us from the summit. Don't opt into every summit. Don't opt into every webinar. Be really clear about what you're doing and where you're going, and be laser focused on the problems you need to solve, and only solve those until you solve them. Then go for the next one. Otherwise, your business is going to become Frankenstein, and you're going to have, if you guys know the Frankenstein story, right? It's not just a monster. It was designed and built from human parts, like a bunch of different human parts. He was charged with electricity, and then it was a dysfunctional monster because it was not designed to win. It was designed to just survive, which is what your business will do. And more importantly, it turned on its owner, right? Your business will turn on you and eat you alive if you don't have full integrity and structure in the business. And by integrity, I don't mean honesty, I mean soundness, right? Have one clear overarching strategy, process, and run. Like when companies work with us, whether at smaller levels and 6-figure companies, or 7-8-figure companies scaling to exit, it's now, we used to do it as a recommendation. Now we won't work with you if you don't do this, but we need to be your co-pilot. We need to be in the seat with you, because you have to have somebody who's helping you design the overarching structure and process. And then we can bring in all kinds of experts, but they all fall under we're all working on the same strategy, same plan. Everybody's executing. But most people don't run like that. You've got a bunch of different people, a bunch of different experts, everybody speaking into your business. Nobody has any real vested interest in the outcome. Nobody really knows where it's going but you, and you're not even sure where it's going because you don't even know who to listen to. And then you're just circling all the time. And that's dangerous. It's not fun.
Right, right, right. And so this has been an amazing conversation. So much good value when it comes to sales. So if people want to get a hold of you or learn more about you, what's the best way to do that?
Have all my socials in there, so please connect with me on social. We've got a lot of videos going out these days that are tons of content for you. So Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and I'm going to give you my cell phone number though, and it is also manned by my team because I don't want to be a bottleneck. If you have a question or you need something, just shoot a text. I always find that's the best thing. Just give me just say, hey, heard you on the Head Smack podcast, and we can start some dialogue and see what we can do to solve for you. So my number is 916 area code 587-1946. And I will get that right here. I'll know that it's you. I'll know what's going on, and I love to know what's going on here. Because here's another, just a strategy in terms of segmentation and bringing humanization in the process. I have a personal mission to know everybody on my list. I know that sounds
That's
ridiculous.
good. Yeah.
I want to know. When I get an email from somebody, I want to, oh yeah, he showed up for a webinar 3 months ago, or she was here. I want to know what's going on with you. And I can do it. Right. But this is one way I do that. I want to know your name. I want to know what you're dealing with, because then you're more human to me, and then I'm more human to you.
Yeah. Wow. That's so awesome. And you had mentioned also a download, and we'll have that in the show notes. You also have an event coming up.
Yeah, we do. We have we have this in the September 11th, 12th, 13th is coming up. It is our new era of selling live event, and we're going to break down the state of sales emergency that we were talking about today. How does it fit you as a business owner? How does it fit you if you're a sales professional? And guess what? If you're a solopreneur, you're both. So make sure that you are designing your business for somebody else to run it from the beginning, and we're going to make sure you're put on that path.
Awesome. And what's your website? What's the best way to find more
You
of your
go to
socials?
gaintheedgenow.com, and you'll find us there. So anything we can do to help, just let us know. Tell us you got here from the podcast with Paul, and we're just excited to see you win.
Well, Jim, this has been amazing, man, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom as the sales godfather. And so this has been amazing, and I've absolutely loved it. I believe, and the existence of the Head Smack podcast is that one idea well executed can change everything. And so I do want to, one of the things that I do with guests is before we wrap up is I want to make sure that they've shared anything that they want to share. So what's a question that you wish I'd asked you?
Why? Probably what's my bigger play here? My big purpose. Be honest with you, I'm great at sales, and it's a fun game to play. But it's sales, it's business, and as cool as that is, it's a means to an end for us. And given my background, and that we have amazing grandkids and stuff, we are focused on what we call the throwaway society. And we are on a mission to build what we call opportunity cities. And opportunity cities are buildings, facilities, compounds in downtown urban areas where we can employ ex-cons, who we call victors, right, instead of convicts, and aged out foster teens who nobody loves because they're not cute and cuddly. And we want to give them jobs and purpose and resource and training. Because something that happened when I did prison ministry on Folsom State Prison, and all of the inmates that are tracking rehabilitation, they're on a point system, and you earn points by doing all kinds of things to develop yourself. And when we would go in and do Bible studies with them and stuff, they were doing family planning, education, Bible study, drug counseling, everything. And then they get out and they don't have any of that. And no wonder they retreat and go back in. And so we in these facilities, not just giving them employment opportunities, but also surrounding them with all of that same programming so they can continue on the journey that they're on to become contributing members of society. And we want to be instrumental in making that go so that we can flip the recidivism on its head. Instead of 76% of them going back in, we want 76% of them coming out. Quite honestly, we want to eradicate it altogether. And once they come out, they stay out.
Yeah.
So that's the mission. Everything we do in our company and our business funds all of that. And that's what we're really trying to do. And then building alternative education centers for kids, because over my dead body will our kids go to public school in California. And we want to make sure they know how to solve problems and build businesses and be contributors to life.
Man, that's so amazing, Jim. This has been a great conversation, and I appreciate you coming on. And I'll have those links in the show notes as well. And definitely re-listen to this podcast, take some notes, and reach out to Jim, and he can make an impact on your business in an amazing way. Thank you, Jim. This has been awesome.
Appreciate the time.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.